So you have heard about the market shift in New Jersey. If you've watched my recent episode on the topic, you saw numbers to substantiate what you are hearing, maybe just discovered, or maybe have been pondering, but just didn't have that evidence yet. That is out there already in one of my previous episodes, so do take a look. Today, we are going to look specifically into, on the buy side, what things do you need to look for? What are those leverage points that you want to bring to the table if you are a buyer in this market? If you're a homeowner, conversely, these are items that you want to pay attention to determine what, if any, do I do to prepare for my house being on the market? What is going to give me best value? And what are some of those things that I think are better to just negotiate on? And that's going to vary based on every given homeowner situation. For example, how fast of a sale they need, how much margin they need in terms of their bottom line, and what is owed against the property. So we're going to have information that is pertinent to the marketplace right now, because right now, buyers in many cases do have far more leverage than they did just as recent as maybe 3 to 4 months ago. They have more leverage now. So we're going to take a look right now, things that you need to know before you buy, before you make that offer. Here is my comprehensive checklist to be prepared for that negotiation. Hello and welcome back to New Jersey Living. My name is Corey Jones. I'm a licensed real estate agent here in New Jersey, and my job is to help people just like yourself, and I've helped hundreds, both buy, sell, in some cases rent real estate here in the Garden State. So today we are going to dive into some of the items that you absolutely want on your checklist when you are making a determination as to whether to make that offer on a property, and things that you really need to know. What are the look-fors? And if you're a client of mine, whether a past client or a current client, and I'm working with you or have worked with you on the buy side, these things you already know. But if you're someone who is either preparing or you're not working with me, but you're out there on the hunt, these are things that you need to really attend to when you are viewing property. So we're going to start there with the things to look for just when you go to either open house or viewings, and we're going to get into the whys of those, but then we're going to dive a little deeper into some information that you need to really discuss with your agent. Of course, if you need some direct assistance, my team is here. My contact information flashes up as you see it right now every so often, just to give you contact information to reach out to me should you have any questions or needs of support. So from experience number one with my clients coming to view property for the first time, we are covering what I tell them are the 3 primary things that we are always going to look for in every single viewing. Now, you watch my episodes enough, you know I have the big 3, and that pertains to more so location, right? What drives demand in New Jersey in terms of the price points and how aggressive buyers tend to be in going after property. And those big 3 items are proximity to New York City, train station within the municipality, and school rating. So don't get that confused with the 3 that we're talking about, those 3 primary items that we're looking for when we go to any given property viewing. So start off right off the bat. We connect, me and my clients, for the first time, and we go through basically what I'm doing right now, but it's a bit more hands-on because we're in the property, of course. But we touch on the 3 things that we are going to definitely look for, because buyers by nature are looking at what they tend to look at online, whether it be Zillow, homes.com, realtor.com, Fin, whatever. They're looking at the conditions and the aesthetics, primarily, as you probably already know, kitchens and bathrooms, as well as some of the exterior of the house, right? So by nature, people come in and they're looking for those things that tend to generate excitement about a property. And do they have meaning? Yes, they do. The condition of kitchens and bathrooms particularly drive the market value of properties. But as a buyer, you're looking at a bigger picture. You want to know, what are the main significant maintenance items that I'm going to take on when I purchase this property? There are 3 of them that you absolutely need to be aware of. One of them is roof, another windows, and the third is your heating system. If it has central air, heating and cooling, but more specifically, because in Jersey we have a mixed bag. A lot of properties do have central air. A lot of properties do not have central air. All right. So, but the heating system itself, these are bigger ticket items. All right. So the least expensive of those, just start off with just in terms of the cost comparison. Heating systems. Heating systems, if you have a boiler and you need to replace a boiler. And so a boiler is you either have, what's more often I find is hot water that runs through either baseboard heating or even radiators, hot water boiler or a steam boiler. These typically going to run you $6,000 to $7,000 to replace. All right. So if you're looking at boilers, that's a little bit on the less expensive end compared to an HVAC system. If you're installing an entirely new HVAC system, and that's just a system, that's not installing one where you're installing ductwork, because that involves a lot more labor. All right. If you have to install one where there currently was not, or previously, I should say, was not HVAC system, is more costly. But that you're talking about 12, and I'm being modest, about 12K. All right. Windows, depending on how many windows, depending on if there's a bay window, depending on the size of the window, and also depending on what brand of window. You can range from your more economic and modestly priced window that you'll find typically in a Home Depot, like an American Craftsman, or more of your high-end brands of Anderson or Pella, right? So that varies as well. But typically, your window replacement is going to be somewhere in probably about a 13 to 18 easily, all right, type of price point to replace windows. And we're going to get into the why of all three of these, of course, and why they are significant and important. And then there is the roof. So again, depending on the square footage of your roof, depending on pitch factors, also the dynamics of the design of the roof, how detailed of a roofing job it would be, because some roofs are just straight front, back, kind of A-frame, and that's it. Really direct and straightforward. Other roofs are more intricate, right? So it does vary. But a roof replacement can be anywhere on a smaller ranch or cape, about 10,000 to something that could be easily 25,000. So these are bigger ticket items. These aren't replacement of a hot water heater for $2,000, right? It's not another, maintenance type of item. Could be something in the nature of I'm having to go and do some basic repairs within the electric panel itself in terms of some wiring. Okay, so that may cost me $1,000, $1,500. For something that's more moderate in terms of a job, something super simple. Electrician still is going to be like $5,000. So there's a lot of smaller end repairs, but then there's the big ticket items. These three are your big ticket items. Reason being they are important is because they absolutely impact the health of the home and the efficiency in which you can keep your home warm and keep it cool. All right. So roof, obviously, you want to keep water out, moisture. If you have not heard this before, you're hearing it from me now. Moisture is absolutely the number one enemy of a home. Water is essential for life. It can be great. It's life-giving. We need it. We need it even for just keeping lawns green and pools to have some leisure time if you do have one. Obviously, domestically, you use it for showers, daily. You're using it for cooking. But if it has regular contact with the structure of your home, it is a problem. So for roofing, you do not want water seeping in anywhere in your home. Likewise, your windows impact that as well. You don't want water falling or being retained anywhere around the foundation of your home, right? So roofing has a big, significant factor with maintaining a home in terms of water intrusion, preventing it. Windows, we're talking efficiency. How efficient do your windows keep heat in or keep cool air in, depending on what season it is? All right. And then there's the safety aspect of it too. You don't want to have windows that lift up and then they fall right back down, causing safety hazards. And it's an aesthetic as well. So it's an aesthetic to seeing really newer, clean windows when you enter a home. But, aesthetics they matter, but what's really significant is the efficiency because you are paying those utilities from month to month. And obviously, with heating, you have to keep the house warm. All right. So we have extended seasons. We're in the Northeast. There are extended seasons of either cold or cooler weather. So, efficiency wise, how efficient does the system operate? Does the system break down frequently? Is the system just old and it's at a point where it's near end of the life? All right, where you want to start thinking, all right, I want to get a new system, but I also want to get something that's going to be more efficient than the one that's in my house that was working fine during its life. It did its job, but it's not as efficient as those that are constructed today compared to something that was installed 30 years ago. So just going in, we're in our first experience in a home. My buyers and I, we're pretty much going through this conversation that I'm talking about right now. We're also talking about some other smaller details that we'll jump into towards the middle. I won't say it's at the end, but towards the middle, we'll jump on some other things that we go through. But those three items are critical. And I really try to shift the attention to those items to not get too caught up into the nice kitchen, the newly renovated bathroom. Those things are nice, but we really want to see the big picture, especially when it comes to flips, where contractors are often cutting a lot of corners. Those who are like your middle of the road, if not low end, all right, investors or contractors that don't put a lot of detail or investment into the property. We're really keenly looking at these things to see, hey, what am I really taking on here, even though everything looks so bright and shiny? So just real quick overview, what we're looking at for roofs. Start with roofs. There's different shingle types, a tendency to have like a telltale indicator of whether a roof is really old. Normally you'll see just a weathering of it, but you also tend to see your brick rectangular tiles as your older roof styles. Not too many roofs, homes that have new roofs, at least in this region, are going to be the older, just brick tile asphalt shingle, right? So you're going to see a three tab layer normally with those shingles, and there's various forms. You have asphalt. I'm just looking at some options here online. You have architectural. You have slate. You have composite, and solar shingles are starting to pick up some trend in some areas of the country. You have wood, cedar. There's some that are going to be like the terracotta. The older style that's in a lot of the historic areas, and that's something to pay attention to as well. If you are purchasing a home in a historic area, you need to be aware of the guidelines, the historic guidelines that you must follow should you do repair or replacement work on that property. All right. So when you see most often what we see here in the Northeast is going to be a 3-tab newer roof style. The seller's disclosure oftentimes is going to tell us the age of the roof, but the owner may not have owned the property that long. Maybe they've only been in the property for 5 or 6 years, and the roof was there and in fine condition when they purchased it, so they don't know the exact installation date. You are going to have an inspector that's going to give you a general idea of the age of the roof when they do the inspection, but that is critical to understand. How many years of life do I have? Do I have another decade before I have to replace this roof? And am I 2 or 3 years out from replacing this roof? And roofs tend to give you, again, this region, it can vary a bit depending on the roof, the material, the contractor, but it should give you about 25 years. Highest I've ever heard of is 40. Okay. It's 25 to 40, you're pretty good. So even if a roof is 10, 15 years old, you have plenty of time. Even if it's at 20, you should be okay, provided the roof is still in fine condition at the time that you purchase it. So roof is something we're looking at. We can't take too deep of an assessment in most cases, but we can step back to take a look at it to see if we can see shingles that are kind of elevated. We see that there's not a real flat surface. It looks kind of lumpy. You can see displaced shingles, right? You can sometimes even see nails that are popping. These are indications that there may be some issues with a roof, but things that we want to register mentally. Inspector absolutely going to touch on those items in more detail should you move forward to get an accepted offer. And so for windows, it's really hard to ascertain exactly the age of windows. Mine, for example, I bought my house in 2000. It's now 2025. from the street, my home, they all look great. They're 25 years old, and I know it's time, right? It's really for me, it's overdue. We're already doing a renovation right now, so I'm kind of dragging my feet a little bit, but I know I'm going to have to probably do this next year. I'm going to have to replace these windows because now I'd say about 40% of them are having some kind of mechanical issue. All right. A few of them even have ruptured seals now, which means the gas that's trapped in between the dual pane that insulates the window, it has been compromised and there's no undoing that. Right. So you'll see a little bit of fogginess or discoloration in the window. So mine are overaged. They should give you 15 years. Maybe you can get up to 20. Again, mine are 25. It's hard to really know specifically dates, but your inspector is going to check all those windows to see if they do open and close. They're going to take a close evaluation too to see if they can pick up any other signs of concern with the window. But the windows, if it's an older home that has not had replacement windows, I've had clients who love the older classic feel of some of these homes, and they intentionally looked at historic homes because they love the character. But those single pane windows and those wood frames from 75, 80 years ago, all right, they may look great, but they have very poor insulation factors. They have poor overall dynamics in terms of efficiency and keeping a home hot or warm, hot or cool, I'm sorry, depending on the time of year. So that's something that definitely will come out in more detail. That's really a quick look to see, have there been replacement windows installed at some point? And we finally get to HVAC and boiler. So HVAC, boiler, going into the basement. Normally it's going to be in the basement. We do have some areas that have a bit more home on slabs here in Jersey, but most places, most homes and most areas do have basements. Basements tell you a lot. It tells you a lot about the general health of the home and how well it has been maintained. One thing, this is kind of a sidebar. One thing that's important is to really take a close look to see, one, does the owner have a dehumidifier in that basement? You can tell right away when they do, because when you go down to the basement, the air quality is pretty much the same as it was when you came from the first floor. All right, no dehumidifier, you can kind of smell that moisture, right? Some of them even basements smell a bit mildewy when you go down, because that air in a basement is absolutely going to have more moisture, in part because it's partially underground. All right. And in part is that it's not part of their central air anyway. It's not part of the central air system in most cases. And there's not as many windows or as much natural air or fresh air that comes in from I shouldn't say natural air, as there's unnatural air, but you get my point. So if there are windows to let in fresh air. So the basement tells you a lot, all right? And the general condition of the foundation walls, if you can see them, all right? So perhaps the basement's been finished. You won't be able to see much of anything like walls and ceiling and floor joists and beams. I like seeing that, and you can't see it in all cases. But then we get to the actual heating source, boiler or HVAC system. Look at the brands do matter because there's some brands that are going to hold up very well over time. So with HVAC systems, York, Carrier, Lennox, these are just a few names. You can absolutely research that to get an idea of some of the more quality brands. And with boilers, what we see in New Jersey most common is the Wheel McLean. It's a very reputable brand, good performance, long last in terms of life as well as is maintained, but it's worth taking a look at what that brand is and what's the reputation of that brand. And you tend to see if a seller has some type of maintenance program. Normally they will put that in the seller's disclosure, or you may see some kind of sticker that shows whatever company maintains the boiler, they come and they'll mark a date on it each year for when they came out to service. So those are things that go a long way in determining what is the general health and maintenance of that boiler and how soon are you going to have to replace it in the future should you purchase that home. So as a homeowner, most homeowners, you're not looking to, and I certainly would not recommend that you go and replace these systems when you choose to sell your home. It very much is something to be aware of that you may need to negotiate on when that buyer comes to the table. And where we are in the market right now, it is far more leverage on the buy side than we've seen in a long, long time. So just in terms of being prepared for potential concessions as a seller, these are things that you want to be mindful of as you determine pricing strategy for your home and what negotiation approach or position you're going to take once you have accepted an offer. Now, while we're on the position of the homeowner, something that also is becoming even more of a concern and a focal point for home sales in New Jersey is flooding. So as a homeowner, you already know whether you have had to file some type of claim for flood insurance. And this is something that it's best to be proactive about and notifying a buyer, hey, look, this is what happened in the most recent flooding or heavy rain incident around our area, our neighborhood, and more specifically, your home. It's becoming more specific in New Jersey to ask these questions because over the past, I would say, and I'm not even going to go back as far as Sandy, which would have been 2012, but we just go back to Ida, which I want to say was 2021, where that's just 4 years ago. So Ida, with several storms since that point in time, even this past summer where we had three, especially in the area that I live, we had three storms within about a 4-week period, literally, where either because of wind damage or heavy rain, there was flooding, right? So as a homeowner, homeowners who've owned a home within the past 4 years here in New Jersey, you're going to know whether you had to file a claim or not. As a buyer, you're going to look into that. Before we get to the buy side, though, for sellers, let's say someone, you haven't owned your home that long, you weren't the owner of your home when Ida hit, and you're having to move for whatever reason. You've only owned for 2 or 3 years, or maybe you have owned since Ida, but you didn't own at the time where Sandy hit. All right, so there is a clue report. This is something that buyers not going to have access or authorization to go and obtain from an insurance company. But as a seller, if you want to be strategic and really show if a buyer has concerns about your town, and we're going to get into one town in just a minute, if you're in a town that has that reputation of flooding or a neighborhood, or you're just in relatively close proximity to a water source, and by water source, it doesn't have to be a huge body of water or some river in the neighborhood. There are sometimes dry creek beds that transform into a river stream, right? Like white water rapids kind of thing when there is heavy rain. And I live not too far. Fortunately, I have not had any flooding incidents in my home. But again, there's locations where I know that I drive by frequently, and it is nothing to even be considered as flood risk, but it is a dry creek bed that absolutely has the potential to overrun and flood when heavy rains come. So you want to get an idea, okay, all right, what kind of history is there on this house? And that's the clue report. So a clue report, again, it has to be obtained by the owner of the home, can't be obtained by anyone else, but that clue report basically gives a history, and you just plug that in on Google and it'll pull up, all that information for you about the report. But as a seller, that may be something that you want to leverage to allay any fears or concerns about your property. Okay, before we jump into the next section, more specific to flooding, we are going to make sure that both buyers and homeowners have a few resources at your disposal. This first QR code is for buyers. If you are in the process of purchasing or about to start that journey, please do reach out to me and my team. This is a QR code for you just to go through the process of purchasing in general. And we also have a QR code for those who are relocating to New Jersey, whether you're just outside of the region or if you are coming in internationally looking to purchase property. These resources we make available to all those who need support on the buy side. For homeowners, we have 2 resources for you, even if you are not looking to sell right now, but you should know your value. So first QR code is for a complimentary CMA, no strings attached, just gives you your market value as of today. The next QR code is for those who I call cash curious. You'd like to know what an investor would offer you today for your property in cash, not an obligation whatsoever to sell or to move forward into a transaction, just knowing what that price is. So this QR code is for you. We can get that number to you within 48 hours. Now on the buy side, we're going to take a look right now and see what a report that your agent is going to access that basically gives us a view of what is it about that area that should be a concern, if any. Okay, so we are right now we're on viewing the FEMA flood risk tool, right? New Jersey flood risk notification tool. This is, of course, tied in with the information that is going to be most recent about flood areas. These maps have changed over years because, to my point a little earlier, we have seen significant changes, and we're going to get some footage. I know I referenced what happened in my neighborhood. I'm going to give some footage of that from news coverage, which is going to maybe surprise some people that this would happen in certain areas in New Jersey, but it has recently. So as we can see, this right here is, we're looking in Cranford. This is the specific property that we're looking at. This is a recent sale of a property. We'll look at the more specifics on that property in a minute, but this property is in Cranford, and you can see that this is a area where we see a lot of the blue, which is, as you can see on the legend, a 1% chance, annual chance of a flood hazard. And how that translates is this: is your home going to flood every year? The answer is going to be no. If there are heavy rains or a heavy rainstorm, will your home be impacted? Most likely it will. Now, the degree of that impact, the severity, does vary. Impact could mean that I have a sump pump. I might have 2 sump pumps in my basement, and they're going to consistently be churning, right? Some of them are going to run no matter what because the water table in that area is relatively high or is close enough to a water source that the pumps are going to consistently pump water out. But when there's heavy rain, those pumps are going to be running pretty consistently. If the rain is heavy enough, you could be in a situation where your basement takes on water. Some scenarios, it could be 2 to 4 inches. Other scenarios, which again, we've had recently, where the entire basement, we're talking 4 or 5 feet of water, which destroys everything, okay, pretty much in that basement. All right, so after the most recent storm, this is where we'll flash up some footage. This was in the Union County area of New Jersey, dating back to July of just this past summer. And ordinary roads that you never thought of to be low-lying became rivers. All right, neighborhoods that you never would have thought would have water at elevated levels, knee-high or higher, they did. Okay, so this is something that has happened pretty frequently in sections of Cranford, not all of Cranford, but sections of Cranford through the past 5 years. All right, but this particular storm had such a significant impact on many towns that were at basically the plains or the low-lying valley areas coming off of the Watchung Hills, which aren't really mountains, but the Watchung Hills area, where a lot of that water streams down from very rapidly at that. So yes, this is a map that gives you an indication when you buy this property, you know right offhand, okay, given this situation right here, I can see it is pretty safe to assume I am going to need flood insurance for this situation right here. And even though you don't see a whole lot of doesn't appear to be a streaming river or anything coming through here, the Rahway River does wind through Cranford. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take you over to another tab, and we're going to take a look at that property. So that property specifically is right here, number 7. So 13 Henley. And we're going to take a look at that property just to get an idea of still what it sold for, what it listed for, what it sold for, what have you. But all of these properties right here are for the most part in that heavier flood area. We see this map and you see some lake, pond, nothing, again, looks too significant from a standpoint of waterways, but there is a winding, really calm water source here that is the Rahway River. You say that fast, you'll get it mixed up quite often, at least I do. But Yeah, so you'll get heavy rains that totally transforms the landscape. So when we take a look at Henley, let's take a look at Henley right here. We are going to close out this map view, and just while we're in here looking at numbers, I just want to see what the Cranford market, which is a higher demand. This is a community. This is a three check mark. This is a big three check mark community. Okay, train, proximity, schools, all checks. And we are in the summer months. This is all August until today, which is late September. And you take notice that you see a lot of properties that have sold under a 10% above ask kind of threshold, right? You see 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of 19 went below. And then there's a few standouts, right? A 20% above. We see here, we see there was a 16 above, and we see there was a 12 above. But everything else, 3, 6, 2% above, 8, 9% above. This has been, compared to the market that we've been seeing since COVID, this is pretty tame for, again, a three check mark big three community. So let's take a look at Henley here just to get some details. We see that Henley listed at basically 725 and it sold for 20,000 above that at 745, 15 days on market. All right. And it had a highest and best deadline. So that goes to show you that people definitely still will purchase in areas that do have flood risk because they're weighing everything and they know they're going to have flood insurance and they understand the risk. But like in this case, it's something that is not that big of a concern. Some buyers, I have clients who say, if it's flood risk, period, I'm out, right? I am not even going to consider. But that's not everyone. Everyone will, some people will take into context, they'll look at big picture. Okay, yes, I understand that's a concern, but I understand what I'm taking on with making that purchase, but that purchase gives me these other things that I really value and I really have high regard for. So this gives us a bit of a contextual understanding of what we are taking into account with flood risk. So now you've accounted for the primary conditions of the home that you're looking at, not just the fancy aesthetics, not just the bright and shiny, right? New bells and whistles. You're looking at some of those core factors that determine maintenance of the home moving forward. You also have ascertained flood risk, right? So something that has been impacting many communities in New Jersey more frequently as of late in the past probably 5 years, more so than any other time frame since I've lived in Jersey, and I've been living in New Jersey for 26 years now, right? So now, other item that you want to account for when looking at that home, and this is something that's probably going to be more of a conversation after viewing the home and determining based on what I'm considering, have viewed, have researched, the home itself does check a lot of boxes. Do I take that next step? And you want to make sure you are understanding the performance of the neighborhood in the most recent market. So any agent is going to pull up for you comparable sales, and you really want to get something that is local to the neighborhood and something that's showing what is the typical list price, sale price ratio for homes in similar condition. So bedrooms and bathrooms, they matter. The overall count does matter. The condition of the home also matter. So when you're factoring these things in, you want to determine, based on the condition of this house, bedroom, bathroom count, am I going to have to be in a position of 2 to 4% above list price to be competitive based on most recent activity? And by most recent, we'd like to go back just 60 days. 30 to 60 would be great, depends on where you are and what kind of activity has happened. 30 to 60 is ideal. But even if you have to go back to 90, some areas I do have to even go back to a full 60 days. All right. That depends on the area, of course. But most here in Jersey, you can safely get 30 to 60 days of activity to get an idea. of what is the typical trend in that neighborhood, because sellers, you also are referencing what's selling in your neighborhood and what price. You're looking at the size of it, you're looking at the condition of it, and you're often comparing that to your own property, right? So buy and sell, you're looking at those same data points. And buyers, you're trying to leverage the best you can to get the best deal that you can, with the understanding of, am I competing with other buyers, or am I the only buyer at the table? That does matter also. If you're in a very, very competitive market, you're still going to have to come with a degree of aggressive offers, because as some people may have already heard, there are markets in various suburbs in Jersey right now that still are performing at a very high level. All right. So you saw my Livingston episode just prior to this. That's definitely one of them. And there are others that are just like it. And it depends on price point as well. All right. So we're seeing certain activity within certain price points that has not tailed off. Okay. But in general, there's more leverage on the buy side, more so than what we've seen in a long time. Now, some other auxiliary items. I said I would throw this in. I was going to throw it at the end, even though we're kind of towards the end now. But I wanted to throw in a couple auxiliary things. One, when it comes to electrical, all right? So electrical, if it's an older home, are there at least three-prong outlets that are in fact grounded, right? So that's something that you're going to be looking for. The panel, has the panel been upgraded? All right, so is the wiring upgraded? And when that panel it's going to be taken off, the entire cover plate is going to be taken off during inspection. But initially, you're going to take a look at it and get an idea of, is it something that has been upgraded recently? Some people upgrade to 150, some upgrade to 200. Honestly, 100 is adequate for many, many homes. 150 is a little bit more ideal, especially if you have central air. 200 is a luxury. We really don't need 200 in the vast majority of homes, unless your heating and cooking are also fueled by electric. All right, so that does make a difference. But it doesn't have to be 200 to be something to be comfortable with. But nonetheless, you want to see what type of electrical upgrades, if any, have there been. If there's been recent kitchen updates, looking at some of those fine details, caulk lines, grout lines, the even installation of tile, that all of your surfaces and your edges are clean. Even the cabinetry, so the cabinets on the actual kitchen counters, are they level when two doors close? Are they kind of perfectly level, which they should be? This reflects craftsmanship, quality of work, quality of contractor, right? So ceiling lines are the moldings, right? Are they flush? Right, caulk lines clean. Like, a lot of these fine details reflect pride in ownership, or very, very quality flips that have been done by a contractor who values their reputation on doing just that, doing quality work on their flips. Flooring is another thing to consider as well. So some people have certain opinions about laminate flooring. It's easy to walk into a home with a low-end quality laminate or a poorly installed laminate and just be turned off by laminate. There are very, very quality jobs that have been done. I see it all the time. You have some that are so close now to looking and feeling like wood, you have to get down and actually touch it. All right. But yeah, they're in the PVCs, right? So those are being scratch and waterproof. The engineered hardwoods. What type of investment and care has going into flooring? These are more aesthetics, and these are the things that catch people's eye anyway. So these aren't really the new things, but these are some of the more refined details of what to look for when you're observing these things in terms of the quality of work, quality of craftsmanship and skill by that contractor. And if that homeowner had a certain standard, right? They had a certain standard that they wanted to reflect and be upheld. If there is carpet, right? So what's the condition of that carpet? Is it something that just needs to be stripped out altogether? Is there hardwood underneath it? Is it something that, you as an owner, it's a lot more cost effective, in replacing carpet than installing new floors. So I would definitely consider a carpet replacement especially if there's not hardwood underneath. Okay. So these are some things, again, buyer and seller, things to reflect on in this current market, because both sides are really at a place right now where it's an open game on negotiations in many cases because, again, we have more leverage on the buy side than we've seen before. Still seller's market, make no mistake, but there's more room to negotiate. And the final item for buyers to consider and homeowners to be prepared for with this current market because of the leverage points and how things have shifted, you want to be in a position to absolutely inspect the sewer or septic system. And we're going to get into differences in just a moment. Septic would happen no matter what because it's required by every county. All right. So every county, if there's a septic system that's there, you don't find many septic systems in the counties closer to New York City. So like Hudson, Bergen, Union, Essex, you don't find many. But when we get out into Morris, Passaic, definitely Sussex, these are some locations that tend, South Jersey for sure, right? You get into Monmouth, Mercer, Burlington, Warren, Hunterdon. You absolutely are going to see some scenarios, or many scenarios, where there are septic systems. So before we get to that, sewage lines, as a homeowner, rarely do you know the condition of your sewer line. If you do know the condition of it, it's because you had an issue and you had to bring in a contractor to do something to it, whether it be replace it because it severed or collapsed or something like really catastrophic happened, or you just had to have a clean out of some kind. You have a pretty good idea, but those are rare instances. Most homeowners, you don't know the condition of it. So how much grease and just general scale buildup there is in the system itself, root penetration, even obstructions that you can't tell right now because your water is still flowing and your line could be literally just like a dime worth of space that's kind of flowing at some point in time, but just don't know. As a buyer, you absolutely want to have the the sewer line scoped, which means a contractor is going to go in, they're going to go in with a camera and a light and run from your home all the way into that line ties into the city line itself. All right. That's something that it is worth the investment. It's normally just under $400 to do, but you want to have that done. As a seller, it's worth getting an idea of what that line is like, even if, again, you're not looking to sell. But what is the condition of my line, right? Do I need something done to that to avoid bigger issues down the road? If it is septic, so some buyers are understanding of septic systems with the understanding when it is time to replace a septic system, you are going to have to be prepared for about a $40,000 spend. All right. So there may be some cases where you can get by with 25, but I think those days are probably over. If you have some experience with that, please do drop some comments right here. You all see my number flashing up, quite honestly, but definitely flash in some comments along the way. You have to be prepared. And those systems are designed to give you 20, 25 years. All right. Many cases, they've been around a lot longer than that. When you're ready to buy a home, and those systems are often, over 30 years old. Okay, so those have to be inspected and pass inspection, and it's the responsibility of the seller to make sure that it can, in fact, pass inspection. Likewise with well water, right? So if well is the primary water source, then the seller's responsibility is their responsibility to have the water tested and pass. Okay. So it's something to, again, be prepared for as a buyer. That's something that you're not going to be able to do just by viewing the home. But this is something that's a part of inspection when you're in that next phase of your search, which means you're in a transaction that's pending. That's some kind of conversation that you want to have with your agent as to who is reputable. Definitely feel free to reach out to me. Even if you're already there in a place of getting inspections done, I will gladly give you my primary guy for referral, who is excellent, is my go-to guy for a lot of jobs, inspection included, but he is the go-to for that, along with chimneys as well, as a matter of fact. But yes, I can pass that on just as a courtesy. Nothing expected on my part. All right. So these are some of the things that you want to account for as a buyer before you buy. Be prepared with these information knowledge points when you are looking from one place to another. Absolutely having these things in mind when you are making an offer and what you want to be prepared to negotiate on once you are in the transaction. And as a homeowner, things that you just need to be prepared for, because we do have a shift that you as a seller, it's important to consider what my position is in the market. How do I most effectively roll out and establish a strategy that's going to give me the time frame and the landing point in terms of both the purchase price and potential concessions to get that deal to the finish line? What do I need to prepare for and strategize for? And that is going to vary a little bit from one market to another. Right here, sometimes in the same county, definitely neighboring towns don't always have the same story. So feel free to reach out to me for any questions. I want to thank everybody again for joining us for another episode. We are going to continue to dive into what this market is showing us in the weeks to come. We didn't do as much data points like I normally do, but we're going to get into some more data in our upcoming episodes. We're going to continue the Jersey City investor spotlight. We're going to also spotlight investment in some other communities as well outside of Jersey City. But just stay tuned. If there's any specific thing that I can do, communicate, feel free to reach out. My contact information is right here again. Be sure to click like, subscribe, and notification bell, because we want to keep this momentum flowing of letting everyone know about New Jersey Living who is considering housing right here in the Garden State. So thank you again. As I always say, stay safe and stay tuned to New Jersey Living.